Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. So, I am going to say shout out to this young man. At least he is calling his own community to order, not we calling them to order. Because majority of all these things were something that I learned from my own people, right? But why I am giving him credit is the fact that he is bold enough to stand and tell them the truth. And I am going to say this. The reality is that these people really knew what they are doing, the games they are playing. So he all talked about how white people have always had ways to many dogs and why they had many dogs. While he was explaining all that, I also remember the things I learned from my own people and how people that look like me were also hunted, right, with dogs back then. And I don't know if you have ever noticed this. Black people do not like dogs. I know what I am saying. And if you trace it back, check back Africans and other distant, in fact, they do not like dogs. It is just recently that people started doing, oh yeah, I like pets and all that. Some of them are lying. Some of them are looking for acceptance. It is not our thing. I remember telling you people that the only time you will get some people to hit the road and protest what is going on is the day you take away dog shelters and cat shelters. Let's get into this video.
White people have always had way too many dogs because they have always needed something to control besides other people. White people's obsession with dogs isn't about companionship, it's about domination. From European aristocrats hoarding hounds like status symbols to settlers using attack dogs to enforce slavery and colonization, white societies have long treated dogs better than people, as long as they were obedient. They bred dogs to enforce social hierarchies, hunting hounds for nobles, attack dogs for slaves. They prioritized dog breeding over feeding the poor, even when their own economies were in collapse. They weaponized dogs against enslaved people, indigenous communities, and their political enemies, because why do your own dirty work? They humanized dogs while treating actual humans, especially black and brown people, like animals. White people today pretend like their dog obsession is about love, but historically, it was about hierarchy, power, and violence. White elites have always used dogs to reinforce class hierarchies. In medieval Europe, dogs weren't companions, they were status symbols. In feudal Europe, hunting dogs were luxury items. Commoners were banned from owning them. Greyhounds, bloodhounds, and mastiffs were legally restricted to nobility. Owning a well-bred hunting dog was as important as owning land. It showed that you were better than the peasants. White elites treated dogs like extensions of their own power. Poachers, aka starving peasants, were executed if caught with a noble's dog breed. Dogs were bred to enforce class control. Bloodhounds didn't just hunt deer, they hunted people. Even in times of famine and war, aristocrats spent fortunes on their dog kennels because their dogs meant more to them than their subjects. And yes, the white obsession with purebred dogs comes directly from their obsession with racial and class purity. White settlers didn't just own dogs, they used them as colonial weapons. Wherever white people went, so did their attack dogs. Spanish colonizers used war dogs to terrorize native people. Columbus and Cortez didn't just bring swords, they brought mastiffs trained to rip native people apart. Dog terror was a colonial strategy, letting their war dogs feast on native peoples in public executions. They justified it by calling native people subhumans, but gave their dogs full military honors. Dogs were used to enforce slavery. Enslavers bred Negro hunting dogs specifically to chase, maim, and unalive escaped slaves. Bloodhounds and mastiffs were trained to track black bodies across plantations. Runaways feared the dogs as much as the slave catchers, because once they were set loose, it was over. Settlers also used the dogs to control Native Americans. During westward expansion, U.S. soldiers used attack dogs against native resistance fighters. These same Indian hunting dogs were later rebranded for police forces. While native people were driven onto reservations, white people built entire industries around sport hunting with dogs. White people have never just been dog lovers. They have always used dogs to reinforce racial and class order. White people have always prioritized dogs over human lives. If there's one thing that white elites hate, it's helping the poor. But if there's one thing they'll always fund, it's breeding dogs. During the Irish potato famine between 1845 and 1852, British landlords let millions starve, while continuing to fund elite dog kennels. During the Great Depression, rich white Americans kept their purebred dogs in luxury, while their neighbors starved. During apartheid, white South Africans refused even basic education for black children, but spent fortunes on breeding and importing European hunting dogs. If given the choice between saving a dog and saving a starving human being, white elites have historically chose the dog. And this mindset is still alive today. White people will donate millions to animal shelters, but ignore poverty in black and brown communities. They'll cry over a police dog getting shot, but justify cops killing unarmed black people. They'll campaign for dog adoption harder than they'll ever campaign for racial justice. White people have always seen some humans as less valuable than animals. White people invented dog racism while pretending to be against it. White people obsess over purebred dogs because they invented blood purity in the first place. Eugenics, the science of breeding superior humans, was modeled after dog breeding. Mustache Man Who Shall Not Be Named was obsessed with German shepherds and promoted breeding programs for both dogs and people. White aristocrats wrote entire books about how mixing dog breeds was as dangerous as mixing races. Even today, white people assign race to dogs. Pit bulls, aka black dogs, are criminalized, while golden retrievers, aka white dogs, get a pass. Black dogs get adopted less from shelters because white people unconsciously associate them with danger. Police forces breed and train attack dogs the same exact way they did in slavery and colonial wars. White people invented racism, then applied it to their own pets. White people's dog obsession is an escape from their own social decline. They refuse to have kids, but will raise 3 Labradors like their biological offspring. They feel disconnected from community, so they turn dogs into their emotional crutches. They want unconditional obedience, so they choose dogs over humans. White people's dog obsession is about control, not love. That's why they ignore human suffering while spending millions on pet pampering. That's why they cry when a police dog gets hurt, but justify police aggression against people. That's why they advocate for animal rights while voting for politicians who gut social programs for children. White people treat dogs better than humans because they don't challenge whiteness. Dogs don't talk back. They don't demand reparations. They don't compete with white men for jobs, and they don't expose white privilege. Until now. White people don't love dogs. They love what they represent: obedience, control, and unconditional acceptance. White people's dog obsession isn't about love. It's a historical reflection of how they see the world. Some humans deserve loyalty and care. Others deserve to be hunted and controlled. And the best companions? The ones who never question their master. White people don't own dogs. They need them. Because without them, they'd have to face the fact that their entire civilization is built on dehumanizing everyone else. Cope. White people have always had way too many dogs.
So a lot of what this guy says in this video is correct, but I wanted to add on specifically about black Americans and dogs, because the founding fathers hated the idea of black people having companionship, so they made it so black people couldn't have dogs. George Washington famously made it so that if anybody who was black was caught with a dog, they would beat that black person and then hang the dog. In addition to that, when slavery was abolished, dog ownership amongst white people skyrocketed. And a lot of the breeds of dogs that you associate with luxury were bred for rich people. For instance, the pug.
White people are the laziest exploiters in history, and the receipts are endless. White people love to posture as the architects of civilization, the hardest working people to ever grace the earth. But the historical record says otherwise. They have never built anything without forcing other people to do the labor. From the plantations of the Americas to the factories of the Industrial Revolution, from colonial conquests to modern corporate exploitation, The white ruling classes had perfected the art of avoiding real work while reaping the rewards of stolen labor. They enslaved millions rather than farming their own land. They looted entire continents rather than develop their own resources. They forced children into dangerous factories while sitting in boardrooms. They built entire economic systems around wage theft and inherited wealth. And today they still live off the spoils of past and present exploitation while calling everyone else lazy. The backbone of white economic dominance wasn't ingenuity or effort. It was forced labor on a global scale. The transatlantic slave trade was born because white landowners refused to till their own soil. European empires enslaved millions rather than build self-sufficient societies. Plantation owners in the US and Caribbean sat in mansions while enslaved Africans worked from dawn to dusk. After abolition, they created sharecropping, tenant farming, and debt peonage to keep non-white people working for free. Translation: white people never built their own economies. They just stole bodies to do it for them. If they were really the world's hardest workers, why did they need millions of enslaved people to do all the labor? It wasn't just labor they avoided. They refused to even create the conditions for labor. They stole land from indigenous peoples rather than develop their own agricultural systems. They plundered Africa, India, and Southeast Asia for raw materials instead of just producing their own. They extracted wealth from colonies while leaving the native people in poverty. They still live off stolen land and resources to this day, while pretending like their wealth comes from hard work. White civilization isn't built on innovation or industriousness. It's built on wholesale theft, followed by smug self-congratulation. When forced labor became less convenient, white elites turned to a whole new class of unpaid workers, their own children. Factories in 19th century England forced children as young as 5 into 16-hour shifts. Coal mines sent white children through tunnels while their fathers drank in pubs. U.S. textile mills worked children to the bone because paying adults was too expensive. White elites lounged in drawing rooms while their own children hacked up soot in mills. If they were such hard workers, why did they need to enslave children to keep their industries running? Slavery and child labor wasn't enough. White business owners then created an entire economic system to keep avoiding work. They paid starvation wages while raking in profits. They passed anti-union laws so workers could not demand fair pay. They relied on immigrant labor, such as Chinese, Mexican, and Caribbean, instead of working hard themselves. They offshored modern labor to the global south, while sitting in air-conditioned offices. And the scam continues. They call themselves job creators while hoarding wealth. They whine about immigrants taking jobs they refuse to do. They pretend finance is hard work, while laborers break their back to survive. White economies aren't built on sweat and toil. They're built on avoiding actual work while leeching off of the working class. After centuries of exploitation, white elites don't even bother to pretend working anymore. They inherited land and businesses built on slave labor. They used nepotism to secure wealth while demanding others pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They take credit for building businesses that their grandfathers stole. They retire early while calling minimum wage workers lazy. They work from home while demanding service workers commute for $12 an hour. They vacation in stolen wealth while mocking the poor for wanting basic housing. They flip houses instead of contributing to their communities. They act like trading stocks is a job while calling actual labor unskilled. If white people built their own wealth, why does so much of it come from inheritance, exploitation, and stolen land? The truth is in the history books, but white people would rather avoid reading those too. Cope. White people are responsible for AIDS, and they're still making it worse. White people love to blame AIDS on Africa, but let's be real. They're the ones who spread it, ignored it, and let millions of people die, just because they didn't care. They spread it through dirty colonial medical practices. They ignored it because they thought it only affected gay and black people. They hoarded medicine and let millions suffer because of corporate greed. And yet, they still have the audacity to act like it's everyone else's problem. White colonial doctors spread HIV because they were too lazy to sterilize their needles. White people were out here in the early 1900s jabbing people with the same nasty used syringes over and over again. Belgian and French colonial doctors in Africa couldn't be bothered to sterilize medical equipment, leading to mass infections. Forced labor camps created by white colonizers created perfect conditions for the disease to spread. Instead of improving healthcare, they focused on squeezing profits out of Africans, even if it meant killing them in the process. So maybe if white people had just known how to wash their damn needles, we wouldn't be dealing with a global epidemic. The moment AIDS started killing people, white conservatives were gleeful because they thought it only targeted people they hated. Reagan ignored the AIDS crisis for years because it was seen as a gay disease. The US government let thousands of people die before even acknowledging the epidemic. White evangelicals and Republicans literally said that AIDS was God's punishment. Meanwhile, in countries like Cuba, run by a non-white communist government, public health responses to contain the virus were immediately developed. But white-run governments, they did nothing. Big Pharma, run by white executives of course, had the medicine to treat AIDS, but refused to make it affordable. AZT, the first major AIDS drug, was deliberately overpriced so that only rich people could access it. Even after new drugs were developed, they refused to share the patents with poor countries. Millions died in Africa because companies decided that profit was more important than human lives. White people created the crisis, then sat back and let people die just to make money. White people literally used AIDS as a weapon. White governments weren't just negligent, they were actively making it worse. The apartheid government in South Africa spread AIDS misinformation to keep the black population under control. The CIA considered weaponizing HIV as part of Cold War biological warfare programs. Evangelical white missionaries spread lies about condoms not working in Africa, directly causing more infections. White people saw a deadly virus and thought, how can we make this work in our favor? That's how evil they are. Even today, white people are still screwing this up. You'd think that after decades of watching AIDS destroy millions of lives, white governments would get their act together. But no, they're still out here being messy as hell. White conservatives still block funding for HIV treatment and education. Big Pharma still tries to keep prices high, even when generics could save lives. Western media still acts like the crisis is over, even though millions of people are still suffering. The same people that cry about protecting life when it comes to abortion have done absolutely nothing to stop AIDS from killing millions of people. White people had every opportunity to stop AIDS, and at every turn, they made it worse. And now, they have the audacity to act like they're the victims. They can take their fake sympathy and shove it, because this crisis is on them. Cope.
This is all I got from this video, and with the anger in me, I am going to try as much as I can to speak on just very few. Because, man, some people all their life, like the only thing they've been wanting for, people that do not look like them is just to, make them be under them. You are going to serve me or you are just going to be under me. Now, let me tell you something. You see, this last election that happened did not happen the way it happened because people do not want something better. They just do not want you to have upper hand. Just know this and know peace, right? Now, let's talk about the dogs. This is not, I remember there were videos that I brought sometime, maybe some weeks ago, maybe in February, early February, right? Where I talked about how there is need to close dogs and cats shelter. That it is only when you close them down that you will see some people start coming out to protest. Why? Because some people think you are not human enough. But the dogs, the cats, should be treated more than human beings. Now, during the period I was reading about Black history, that is like when I started, about 3 years plus now, I am not going to lie to you. You see that dog thing he said is 100% correct. Why did I know that? I know that because during the period I was making research, I also found out how people like me were hunted with dogs. And then, see, I don't like dogs. I don't like cats. I might just see them from far away and probably pretend, "Hi," but I do not like dogs. And I don't pretend. If you are close to me, you definitely will know that I don't like dogs. And where we come from, I am Nigerian, and we have like there are dogs, but they are not violent. They are relaxed and chilled. The only time period, because sometimes Africans love to do white things. I am not lying. I am telling you the truth. Sometimes they just want to do white thing. You see some of them dying because I remember the one they bought in our house back then that I think we did not like them. I think somebody also started having allergies and they linked it to the dog. That was how they let it go. You see them start buying something Shepherd, German Shepherd, and all those violent ones. I won't lie to you. Dogs that were bred in Nigeria, average Nigerian dogs or other countries, because I have been to other countries too, are not violent. They are not violent. It is only when you buy those ones those people used back then, those were, how violent. So that is to tell you how they've been already trained against people that look like me. Now, oh my God, okay. I remember there was a time a man was asked. They asked the man because he did something and people now he started getting media attention. Some of you will remember this video that I am talking about. So he was asked if he is racist. The man said no. Why? Because he has a black dog. Now, how can he be racist to black people? And then I tried linking up black dog, right, to black people. It did not make sense to me then because I was just learning history, African American history. It was later that it made a whole lot of sense to me why he said what he said. And he is not the only one that has said it. So many other people already have also said it. I have black dog or I have black cats. I cannot be racist. Now, I remember even some coming out themselves to talk about how their grandparents used to hunt people that look like me with D0g, right? And then I was like, who does something like this? Who does? Knowing fully well, I don't know. But I am going to think it's causing things, right? Black people in general do not like dogs. Black people in general do not like dogs. Black people in general do not like dogs. I don't care if you are African American, Caribbean, Nigerian, and some other African countries. They do not like dogs. It is now that things are changing that you sometimes see some dog lover, cat lover, and all that. It is very rare to see someone that loves dogs. They are scared of dogs. If they see dog, even if I see dog now, I am warning you from afar if you are the one carrying it, and I am screaming from wherever I am. Sometimes our ancestors or the universe knows how they connect things for your safety. Why am I saying this? I am saying this because you all know how they hunted you people with dogs. And if you look around, most people that look like me, almost everywhere, do not like dogs. That it's on period. So I was asking myself, how do people sit down and use animal, because dog is an animal, and use animal that you do not like to mess up with your brain? And then I found out that some of them will unleash, right, their dogs, and they will chase, yes, they will chase people that, as far as some go home with dog wounds. That is how bad it was. And when they go hunting, they go with that too. When they see people that look like me, it is being hunted. Right? I am trying so, when I say so hard to mind what I am saying, because if you leave me, I am going to explain it the way it is. So this thing that this young man explained is ancestral thing from them. It is an ancestral, because tell me how I will be working on my own. I did not probably look for your trouble. You probably do not know me. And because you probably do not like me, and then you let your dogs eat me up. You leave your dogs to attack me. That tells you. See, sometimes I sit down and I am like, I see the reason why they are scared. I see 100% reason why some people are very scared, because they feel like if they got so much opportunity, maybe they will also experience some certain things, right? They are so scared. But they should thank their goodness and their stars that is not even what people that look like me have in mind. They are just working towards that system that has been a burden to them. If not, it will really be awesome. When I say awesome, you know what I meant. It will really be amazing. Yeah. For the HIV and AIDS, did he lie? He did not lie. They need to hear this. And the worst part is that they will see all these videos, right? And they will not like or comment. They just watch and run. But they are seeing it. If I am talking about HIV and AIDS, what about Tuskegee experience? Tuskegee experience. Tuskegee experiment they did on my people. Right? You remember that? And some other ones that were not even disclosed. That is to tell you how some people, see, I don't know, but you see this history, sometimes I feel like, can we just close our eyes and but how do you tell somebody not to be careful? How do you tell somebody not to talk about his or her history? How do you tell me not to know my history? You see, one of the reasons why history books are being trashed away, because they cannot contain all the things that they've done. They do not want other people also to know. That's why they said your history is very violent. Remove it everywhere. And then at some point, they said history benefited slaves. Why? Because while they were working as slaves, they were learning skills. And I have been asking, which skills are you talking about? The ones that they came from where you picked them up from, or the one who sat down to teach them skills. Do you know the people that were taking over, kings and queens, engineers and all that? Did you all not see the buildings all over where you are living? How are those buildings that have stayed how many years? 400 years, 300 years and all that, and they are still looking very good. Did you not see the doctors, the nurses, and all that they took away? The farmers, goldsmith, the kings, the queens. What are you telling me, or what are you not telling me? So slavery, well, how? How was it beneficial? They knew all those things. The only thing is that they do not speak your language. They have their own languages because you took them from different places. Some speak Ghanaian, some speak French, some speak other distinct different languages. That was how they were able to manipulate some certain things. Man, I don't want to continue because my heart is already burdened. Ooh. They know that they could not do the work. That was why they had to look for people to do the work for them. It's as simple as that. Cope with it. Bye for now.